plane, I ate the sandwich that Miriam had packed for me. I thought about the day before when we cleaned the attic and the garage, everything that was up there. I found a bin of photo albums and papers, custody documents, photos of a man who looked identical to Miriam's brother. I brought the bin inside. Before dinner, Miriam's mom went through the photos, showing me her mother-in-law. I could see, in a way, how she looked like Nora. Miriam found a series of letters she'd gotten from her friends. "These are my old plane letters," she said. "What are plane letters?" I asked her. If someone was going on a trip, you would write them a letter that they could only open when they were flying, when the plane was in the sky. I looked out the window. I finished the sandwich Miriam had made me. How idiotic it was, I thought, to be this high above the ground. I held the sandwich bag in my hand, looking at the clouds below. My mom was waiting in the doorway for me when I arrived at her house in Calgary. My dad was there, sitting on the couch. His hair was thin and patchy around where they directed the radiation therapy. The scar on his head had healed quite a bit since the last time I saw him. He was thinner than I'd ever seen him before, but still, he looked okay. I noticed there was a pigeon cooing from the neighbor's roof. I thought of what it would take to lay some spikes on whatever ledge it was on. I unpacked my suitcase, showing my mom all the clothes Nora had grown out of that Miriam wanted to give to my sister for our baby niece. We had steaks for dinner. When we went upstairs, my dad noticed there were sparkles on my head. They were also on my shirt and on my mom's clothes and on him as well. We couldn't figure out where they all came from. He showed me how to turn on and log into his computer. He showed me all the programs he used. He took me through all his bank accounts. He showed me all of his expenses. We went over them line by line. It occurred to me that the sparkles were from the placemats my mom had put out for dinner. When we went back downstairs, my dad threw all the placemats into the trash. He told me about his life insurance policy. He told me where he kept his will. He told me that as soon as he met my mother, he had no doubt in his mind that she was who he wanted to end up with. I helped him fix up his iPad. We deleted all the apps he didn't want. We changed his background so he could see everything better. He asked me if there was anything I wanted to talk about. I wasn't sure. He put his sunglasses on to ease the brightness that came from the window. When he went upstairs to take a nap, I went with my mom to exchange a sweatsuit for him at the mall. He'd said the fabric was too heavy. Afterward, we went to Home Depot. My mom bought some new garden shears. It began to hail on the way from the store back to the car. In the morning, I talked to Miriam and Nora on FaceTime. It was warm there. Nora was wearing her summer clothes. Miriam followed her around the house. My mom sewed a hole that was in the shoulder of my shirt. I asked her about the pigeon that was cooing for the neighbors. She said that it was constant. Miriam sent us a picture of Nora at the park. After breakfast, we went to the hospital to get my dad's blood work done. When I'd been there last a few months ago, my mom was worried about getting to the hospital and finding her way around there. But after being there so many times for my dad's radiation treatments, she got around on autopilot. We sat in the waiting area at the outpatient clinic, looking at all of the other patients there. It seemed that this illness had leveled us all. When we came home, we went through all my dad's banking again, going through every detail, which bill was to be paid from which account. After lunch, he showed me the replacement water filter they bought for the fridge. They were having trouble installing it. It took me a while to figure out that the filter was at the bottom of the fridge, behind the plastic grate and another long metal piece. I had to lie flat on the ground in order to reach it. I couldn't get a good enough grip on the old filter to turn it out of its socket. My mom brought me a pair of pliers, but they were too thin. My dad found another pair. He got on the ground to see what I was doing. When I removed the old filter, I could see that the one they bought wouldn't fit. He went upstairs to get all the invoices and receipts that he had. He told me that he talked to the manager at the appliance place to get the filter in the first place. He had her name written down on a blue sticky note. I called her, but got her voicemail. I left a message. I called the place they bought the part from. They said it was too late to return the filter, since it had been more than 90 days since they bought it. I called the appliance place, and they told me I would have to talk to the parts place. I told them that I just spoke to the parts place, but they told me to talk to the appliance place. I told them I saw on the bill that they had the wrong serial number written on their invoice, and they directed my parents to get the wrong filter. I spent another 45 minutes on the phone with the woman as she continually told me there was nothing that they would do. I called the manager that my dad spoke to again, but she didn't answer. We went to Costco. I stood with my mom and helped her fill her car with gas. For years, my dad had always been the one to fuel the car. I could see that the tap function on her debit card didn't work. We went to the bottle depot and returned $29 worth of bottles. We took the money to the used bookstore across the street. I bought a book that I had on hold at the library. We went to the parts store that my parents bought the water filter from. I tried to return it, but they wouldn't accept it back. Still, the woman working there took pity on us and gave us a slight discount. We went back to the Home Depot to buy salt for their water softener. When we came home, we took all their patio furniture from the garage and set it up in the backyard. We wrote an email to the bank to order my mom a new debit card. I installed the water filter into the fridge. My dad said that the new sweatsuit we got him didn't fit right. We went upstairs to his computer. He ran me through his finances again. During dinner, my sister called and said that her glasses broke. She asked if my mom would come over and help her husband put the kids to bed while she went to shop for a new pair. I ended up going with her to the mall. We talked a lot about what had been going on. By the end of the night, I lost my temper and ended up yelling at her on the phone. I had a hard time sleeping and was up throughout the night. In the morning, I took a shower and did the laundry. I talked to my mom about what had happened with my sister. I talked to Miriam and Nora while I made breakfast. I sat with my dad. He showed me an article on his iPad about which fruits were best for him to eat: apples, blueberries, avocado. My mom went into the backyard to try out the garden shears we bought from Home Depot. It was nice enough out that my dad was willing to go on a walk. He wore his toque and his hood and his sunglasses. His sweatpants were tucked into his socks. We looked at a construction site nearby. They were digging out the sewer. After our walk, we went into the backyard to check in with my mom. We brought the paper shredder from his office to the garage to start getting rid of whatever records we could. I spoke to Miriam on the phone. She sorted through her clothes, getting rid of things that she didn't wear anymore. I sorted through my old comic books. She told me that her mom had cut her dad out of all the wedding photos we brought in from the garage. And for some reason, she put one of the photos of herself in her wedding dress, standing with a cutout silhouette of a groom in a pot of soil on the back deck. We took all the comic books I'd gone through the bookstore that we went to the day before. They gave us a good amount of store credit. I found 2 books and my mom found a knitting book to take home. When we came home, we broke down about 10 boxes in the garage and took them to be recycled. On the way back, we went to Tim Hortons drive-thru. We got a small coffee with cream for my dad and 2 ice caps, one for each of us. I texted with Miriam. She was tired but doing okay. She was planning to go to the store when Nora woke up from her nap. When we pulled into the garage, my dad was shredding paper. I gave him the coffee. We talked about all the things in the garage, what more we could get rid of. We sat on the couch and watched TV while we drank our coffees. My dad flipped between Cheers and the hockey game. His doctor told him to get some magnesium pills in order to help with his sleep. My dad told me how much he worried about my mom. We watched a scene from a movie where a woman tried to break through an air vent. My dad said that it was Meshuggah and turned it off. My mom and I went back to the grocery store. We bought frozen mango, coleslaw, and more strawberry glucerna for my dad. We found the magnesium pills that the doctor told us to get. I bought a bottle of ice pop flavored prime drink. For dinner, we made one of the frozen pizzas we got from Costco. I talked to Nora on FaceTime before she went to bed. My mom showed me a pair of moccasins she wanted to order online. The next morning, I wrote a message to my sister, apologizing for losing my temper. We made a plan to see each other again before I left. We went through more of the boxes in the garage. We filled my mom's car to the brim with my dad's old books and CDs and records. We dropped them off at the Goodwill. We went back home and filled the car a second time with an old bike, some shelving, a steam cleaner, and more books. We stopped for lunch on the way to Costco. We stocked up on groceries, bread, tomatoes, apples, and coffee beans. Me and my dad went down to the furnace room. We organized what we could. We threw more things out, paint cans and wires. We sat on the couch. My dad fell in and out of sleep while my mom knit. Another episode of Frasier played on the TV. I texted with Miriam. She was reading her book. A story played on the news about a shooting in Toronto. A man was shot and killed outside of an apartment building. I didn't tell my parents that it was only 2 blocks away from our house. The next morning, when we got into the car, my dad said he forgot his hat. I I said I'd go back and get it for him, but he said not to. No one said much on the way to the hospital. Miriam sent me a picture of a strawberry cake she made for her friend's birthday. She sent me a photo of Nora playing with the water tower toy that she set up on the deck. The view from the roof of the parkade at the hospital showed a side of the city I wasn't familiar with. I noticed how crisp the air was. Even on the most clear day in Toronto, there was always a layer of humidity and smog that seemed to blur everything. We took the elevator to the basement to where we would meet the oncologist. We checked in and they gave my dad a list of questions to fill out. He had to rate how he was doing, 1 being the most mild to 10 being the most severe. Insomnia, nausea, appetite, depression, constipation, diarrhea, vomiting, anxiety, drowsiness. My mom and I helped him through some of the questions. He was frustrated by how redundant some of them were. After 10 or 15 minutes, we heard a nurse call my dad's name from up the hall. I went ahead to see where she was, but I couldn't find her. I continued down the hall, doing a lap of the entire floor, but couldn't find her. When I circled back to my parents, I told them I couldn't find her, and then within a moment she appeared in the hallway and led us to our room. My dad handed me his jacket. She weighed him. I read the nurse a list of questions that my sister wanted to ask the doctor. The nurse noted them down. When the doctor came, I was struck by how little there was to say. It seemed all he could do was prescribe the next round of chemotherapy. After lunch, we went to the pharmacy to get my dad's prescription filled. I talked to my sister for a while in the car. There were no good answers to any of the questions she asked. We filled the car with gas again. My mom was getting better at using the machine on her own. Afterward, we had a bit of time, so we went to the toy store so I could find something to bring back for Nora. I found her a reversible Squishmallow. There was a monkey on one side and a cheetah on the other. I also bought a toy dinosaur egg for my nephew. When we came home, I compared the new anti-nausea pills we got to the old ones my dad had and saw that they were double the dose. I called our family's cell phone provider to make me the new admin on the account. When the guy tried to charge us $250 to make the change, me and my dad both lost our tempers on him. Eventually, he settled for $50. We went to my sister's that night. I gave my nephew the dinosaur toy. We came home and watched Frasier and Cheers until it was time to go to bed. It was my last morning there. We drank coffee and watched the news on mute. I thought about what it would be like to be back in Toronto again, of being away from my parents. I didn't know how to write about them, about who they really were, how to explain how they were really doing, of what it was like to really be there. It was too close. I would have to rely on what I wasn't saying, on everything I left out. It would have to suffice because I couldn't do it. To really write about my mom, my dad, my sisters, I would have to do it inadvertently if I was to do it at all. To invent a character outside of myself, I would need to come up with some kind of proxy world, something with parameters. Otherwise, it was beyond my ability. When I waited for my coffee at the airport, I texted my parents and said that I loved them both. We never said that often, if at all. It wasn't the way they raised us or the way they were raised. I had tears in my eyes when the woman at the Starbucks handed me my coffee. I could imagine working at the airport meant you ended up seeing a lot of people cry. I thanked her and went on my way. As I wandered around the terminal from gate to gate, I remembered there was another box of books in my parents' garage that I didn't clear out. I'd have to do it next time. I would take them back to that used bookstore across the street from the bottle depot. When the plane took off, I remembered how dumb I thought it was to be in an airplane, to willfully go that high above the ground. I thought of my parents sitting on their couch day after day, that pigeon cooing from the neighbor's roof. We cut into the clouds and were surrounded by white. I imagined the engine bursting and the plane plummeting towards the ocean. I had the Squishmallow I bought for Nora in my backpack. If the plane did go down, I would pocket it, and if I lived to see another day, I would have it with me to give to her when I got home. As I thought about it more, eventually I came to realize that there was no ocean between where I was and where I was going. For the most part, it was all prairie land.